Yo, what up, a-holes? Thank you for tuning in to the Holistic A-Hole podcast. My name is Eric Levi, and I'm the Holistic A-Hole, the mommy blogger with balls, the inconvenient truth of health. What's up, y'all? Hope you're doing great. Today, I'm gonna do a little a rant here, a little ranting about, just corruption. Just straight up corruption in the food industry when it comes to food policy, the FDA, the USDA, the studies, the science, who's right, who's corrupt, what the flippity fleckin' flying five-finger death punch should we eat? That's what it comes down to, right? But before we get into all that, I want to say what's up and give you a quick shout out. If you're new here to the Holistic A-Hole podcast, make sure you take a hot second, hit the subscribe button right in your podcast player, your feed, whatever you listen to this on, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, whatever it is, make sure you hit the subscribe button because then you get instant access every time the podcast goes live, which is about twice a week at this point, maybe a little more sometime soon. And then if you haven't done this already, go on to all your social mediums. Go on to Facebook, join the Holistic A-Hole Facebook page. Go on to Instagram, find me there, Holistic A-Hole. Twitter, Holistic A-Hole. YouTube, Holistic A-Hole. We got it going on every platform. So this one won't be too long of a podcast because, I just kind of want to get this off my chest. Sometimes I feel like, I can go crazy trying to plan out these podcasts and make sure I have every stat and everything right and whatever. But this one, this is just straight up emotion. This is just straight up emotion because I'm so freaking frustrated, dude. I'm so frustrated. I'm here. I'm learning about health and nutrition. I'm currently in school to become a nutritional therapy practitioner, which I don't know if I've mentioned that on the podcast, but it is something I'm doing, and I'm very excited to get that done, to get that certification, so I can actually have the knowledge and the certification to have these healing modalities, which is really cool, especially when it comes to nutrition. And I'm learning so much science and anatomy and physiology and the history of nutrition and all of its ups and downs. And I just finished this book by this author named Nina Teicholz, who is a bit of a player in the health space, in the nutrition space, especially when it comes to the high fat diets. And I've been very outspoken here about my my opposition to high-fat diets, even though I'm not a vegan anymore, I still have a lot of vegan tendencies. I guess like the bad habit that I picked up was just trying to fill myself with as much good nutrition as I can. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm not on the corner begging for change so I can go buy a stalk of kale. I'm not robbing, people's homes and breaking into cars so I can go buy broccoli and carrots and all this stuff. No, I got a job where I make money and then I can go buy my own vegetables and fruits and I can make bone broths and I can mix all the worlds together, Of course, you don't drink bone broth when you're a vegan. But my point is that even though I'm no longer a vegan, even though I no longer abide by this, kind of quote unquote high carb lifestyle, I still follow it. And lately I've been getting into more fats, which is a departure, especially if you go on the Holistic A-Hole YouTube page and you see just how much I've given it to the high-fat people, to the keto people, to the paleo people. But, that's all the shit I'm learning right now. If there ever was an example of, changing your mind and questioning everything you believe, that's what I'm going through right now. And if you're a regular listener to the podcast, you maybe have caught on to this over the last couple months, which is this changing perspective that I'm having on diet. So I read this book, The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz, and it's all about high fat. It's not even about high fat. It's not about a diet. It's about the real history of fat and all of its trials and tribulations, and I guess just everything, that has brought us to this point where, you walk around the store and everything is low fat, especially if you walk in the inside of the grocery store, not along the edges. That's where all the produce and meat and all that stuff is. But if you're in the middle sections of the middle aisles of the grocery store, this is where all of the, I guess the packaged stuff, the jarred stuff, the canned stuff, the boxes of food, and you will be hard pressed to not be able to find things that are low fat. There are so much low fat, like cereal, right? Cereal is probably the biggest offender of this. I mean, every cereal you find, it's got a low fat claim. Of course it's low fat because it's straight grain. There's no fat in there. There's no butter in there. There's no oil. There might be some hydrogenated oil. That's a totally different thing. But everything's low fat. Now, of course, it's gluten-free. People are putting, no trans fat, no hydrogenated oils, if that's the case. But yeah, so I've been getting onto this kind of high fat train, which is like, let me see, because Nina Teicholz talks a lot about, the science of the benefits of fat and how over really the last 80, 90 years, I mean, that science has been so just manipulated and corrupted, and you have the reason why we've gotten to this point where, people are afraid of butter, for instance, is because, these studies came out that said that butter leads to high cholesterol, which leads to atherosclerosis and heart disease and all these different things, and that's what all the vegans, put their faith in, is all these, studies that say that, butter and animal fat and animal protein lead to these terrible diseases. But the arguments that Nina Teicholz and the high fatters make is that no, that science is corrupt. The science that shows that butter and animal fats are good for you have been basically whitewashed by these certain committees and these boards and the FDA and the USDA, and there's sort of a revolving door between big oil companies and who is it, like Procter and Gamble, Lever or Unilever and Kraft and Kellogg's and all the big food corporations. They put people on the boards of the FDA and the USDA, and I don't doubt that at all, right? So after reading this book, and seeing like, oh, there is a lot of science that shows that saturated fat specifically is actually very good for you. Saturated fat is essential in the function of your cells. It's essential in the function, fats are essential in the function of your, I believe it's your gallbladder, your pancreas, your liver. It helps a lot in specifically like grass-fed butter, butyrate, very good for your colon, gut bacteria. There's just a lot of good science showing the benefits of saturated fat specifically. And then we talk about like cholesterol and what is the deal with freaking cholesterol. There's good cholesterol, there's bad cholesterol, and they don't work independently of each other. It's like when your bad cholesterol goes up, your good cholesterol goes up. When your good cholesterol goes down, your bad cholesterol goes down, right? Is there a way to get, and the problem is a lot of times when we talk about cholesterol, when you talk about getting rid of your bad cholesterol, you get rid of your good cholesterol, and you need the good cholesterol because of all the health benefits it has. It's basically like a vacuum cleaner, and it goes around and it cleans up, all the fat in your blood, and there's so much good, and then you got insulin, and it's like, what the F? What's going on? Okay, so I read this book, And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm convinced. By the way, this is the second time I've read this book. The first time I read it, I was very I was vegan still, and I was reading it because I'd heard this lady on a podcast before, and she sounded intelligent, and I was like, okay, well, let me see what this is about. And even though I didn't agree with it at the time, I was like, it's still a well-written book, a lot of good points. And then that slowly, between that and Gary Taub's book, was it Good Calories, Bad Calories? I was like, okay, well, let me see. Let me start experimenting with this fat a little bit. So it was a little bit at a time. I started working bone broth in, and I started working. Then I started messing around with grass-fed butters, and grass-fed butter, so much good stuff. It's got K2 and MK4 apparently, which is the Dr. Weston A. Price's, what is it, X, was it vitamin X or whatever? That was kind of like the tipping point of like good nutrition and inadequate nutrition. So I started working these in, and within the last couple weeks, I've kind of just tilted over to saying, okay, well, I need fucking fish. I need fucking I'm making grass-fed meat burgers. I'm eating grass-fed burgers from the restaurant. I'm messing around with sardines and salmon, because let's face it, dude, the B vitamins and the vitamin A and the iron and getting all 8 essential amino acids, you can't do that on a plant-based diet. You just absolutely can't. Not to mention, I'd been plant-based, for a couple years, and I would still say I'm like plant-based, but not as much as definitely as I was as a vegan, not as much as I was when I stopped being a vegan. I mean, like when I first stopped being a vegan, like I'm telling you, I would eat just like a half of spoon of butter, and that was it for a week, right? A little bone broth here and there. I mean, just so frugal with the animal, But man, like I'm not gonna lie, like I have dealt with my own vitamin and mineral deficiencies. I see it because dealing with this freaking skin problems was probably my biggest one. Sleep issues, waking up like just insane amounts of times in the night to go to the restroom, or just waking up. Never had a problem falling asleep. That was never a problem for me. But not feeling, I felt strong-ish in the gym, but being winded, not recovering enough, dealing with playing basketball, having rib issues, knee issues. Not too much inflammation, I'll say that. Like I didn't deal with too much inflammation. This was more like, getting injured playing basketball or doing yoga or something. So, and then just kind of like having a very like, my nerves felt fried at times, just feeling angry. Come to realize when you read about things like B vitamins, this vitamin B12 specifically, this is a nervous system nutrient you need. You can't get it from plants. You can't even get it from supplements. You have to inject it in your ass like steroids to get B12, right? B6 is huge. Thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, all these vitamins. You just can't get them like you can from meat. I'm not saying go do a carnivore diet, switch your whole thing around. Really, if anything, I'm saying we should stop being so polarizing with the diets, instead of saying everyone should be high fat or everyone should be high carb or everyone should be high protein. You should just have a solid balance of it. You know what I mean? Get about the same amount as each. Sure, one day you might eat more carbs than fat. One day you might eat more fat than carbs, See how you feel with this. But back to what I'm talking about here. So specifically when it comes to The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz, I think she does a great job in laying out all of the science and all of the studies and all of the doctors and the corruption and the cover-ups and the who's going in the FDA, who's paying off who's sponsored by who's getting money from where. I think that's all great. But when you start doing your own dive into her research, when you start doing your own dive into the actual names of people who she's talking about here, you start to see a little bit different of a story. And I'm going to give you the one example I have, because this was so goddamn frustrating to me when I saw this. It literally broke my heart, man. I'm not going to lie. I'll be full on transparent with you a-holes. This fucking broke my heart, okay? So the whole book is, it is about, how the idea of eating high fat has been corrupted by people in the, the sugar industry and the oil industry and all these people, right? But then, kind of like to put an exclamation point at the end of it, to wrap this whole thing up with a bow. Towards the end of the book, she talks about a meta-analysis that was done by a doctor named Robert M Krause. This was in 2010, and he puts together all of the studies that have been done over the years, showing the benefits of saturated fat, showing the complaints of saturated fat, and then he comes out and his conclusion is saturated fat is beneficial in the diet. Along with these other studies like the Mr. Fit and the Women's Health Initiative study, shows low saturated fat diets fail to provide less risk for cardiac events, okay? But specifically this Krause 2010 meta-analysis is what I want to talk about, because I go on to nutritionfacts.org, which, look, anything you hear, whether it's health, whether it's politics, especially, sometimes like I'll hear a story about Trump. Trump is meeting with Putin, right? Trump is meeting with Kim Jong-un. Trump is, talking about immigration, Trump, whatever, right? You hear that in the mainstream media, okay? And of course, it's going to be very negative. Then I go over to InfoWars, and it's the complete opposite side of the story, right? And in my opinion, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And that's how I feel with this nutrition stuff. So I go to nutritionfacts.org, which is probably like the greatest database you're going to find of science and studies that really show the benefits of plant-based dieting specifically. Because Dr. Greger is very pro plant-based, but he's actually not a vegan himself, which I find interesting. He's, he eats fish, I guess. So, damn it, Dr. Greger, you really fucking blew it, But here, what he does is he's talking about saturated fat, and he's talking about this whole craze that people are on now, which is like people are doing the freaking carnivore diet, people are back on butter, people are back on eating fatty meats, and so he's going the opposite direction, complete opposite direction, saying there's bad science that says saturated fat's good. But then he looks at this guy, Robert Krause, specifically, who Nina Teicholz uses to pretty much put the bow on the end of her book. And turns out this fucking guy, Robert M. Krause, was funded by the National Dairy Council, the Beef and Cattlemen's Association, and the Atkins Foundation. So let that all sink in for a minute. The Dairy Council, with the Beef and Cattlemen's Association, and the, I don't know if it's the Beef and Cattlemen's, might be the Beef and Cattle, whatever it is. The beef people. Big beef. And then the Atkins Foundation, who, their whole thing is about eating high fat. He was funded by all these fucking people. And of course, he takes this meta-analysis and then says, yeah, you gotta eat more saturated fat. When Nina Teicholz literally spent her entire book talking about the corrupt connections between the sugar lobby and politicians and Mick, what is the guy's freaking name? Old politician guy. I'll tell you right now, it is the Framingham Heart Study too. But the one I'm talking about here is the Jesus Christ, the General Counsel. I lost the note. It's Mick something. It's on the edge of my tongue. Guy ran for president a long time ago. Either way, she talks about all the corruption and all these things, and then she ends her whole book with touting this guy, Robert M Krause. And then when you find out that this guy was funded by the meat and dairy people and the Atkins Foundation, all I did was just slap my head, and I'm like, okay, well, where do we go now? What do we do? Because it's just interesting to me how much I rode this roller coaster of I'm high carb, no, I'm high fat, and now I'm like, well, both are just completely corrupted. So this is my call. Can we just have a freaking summit where we have everybody who's in this conversation, like the big names in this conversation, the journalists, the journalists and the doctors and the scientists, and let's put it all on the table. Don't hide your funding. Say who you were funded by, because at this point, lying about it does no good, because everybody's funded by somebody. This research is just far too expensive to do without being funded by somebody, right? So let's just say the high-fat people, we can just assume they were funded by the Beef and Dairy Council, okay? Because that's what all the vegan science is. But then all the vegan doctors, they're pulling science that was funded by the sugar lobby and the oil industries, right? And people are like, well, what's the problem with the oil industry? Well, the oil industry are the ones who make the vegetable oils and the canola oils, and those are the oils that the saturated fat people will tell you is the shit that's really killing you. And I'm gonna agree with that, because the saturated fat people say saturated fat's good. What did we replace saturated fat with? We replaced it with canola oil, right? We substituted it with hydrogenated vegetable oils, partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. At some point they said, look, this is called vegetable oil and it's good for you. When it's not, it's polyunsaturated. It pretty much rancidifies quicker than saturated fat. Saturated fat holds its form. So basically what I'm saying here is when you eat vegetable oil, it becomes more toxic in your body, leads to free radicals, and this is what leads to cancer, diabetes, and heart disease faster than saturated fat. But saturated fat studies come out and say saturated fat is the leading cause. Are they confusing saturated fat and vegetable oil? Are they confusing saturated fat and trans fat? Sometimes I think they are. Sometimes I think they're not. So let's just have a summit where we put it all on the table, no matter what side you're on. And for crying out loud, have a moderator who's not funded by anybody. We're talking like, have me be the because no one's paying me. I will gladly take your money, Atkins Foundation. I will gladly take your money, Big Oil. But somebody just pay me money. Or don't, and I can be the moderator of this discussion. So we can just put it out there on the table and see who the fuck is right. Who is right? Is it the vegetable oil people? Is it the saturated fat people? Because look, I'm downing saturated fat right now. I'm eating the butter. I'm eating the grass-fed beef. I'm eating the fish. I'm eating, the ghee, all this shit. And let me tell you something, man. I feel really freaking good. All of this, brain fog and bad digestion and, higher risk of fucking heart disease and all this stuff, coronary heart disease. Like, I don't feel it. I don't know if you can feel it, but I go to the gym. I'm more active now. My muscles don't hurt. I sleep better. I don't need a nap in the day. So don't give me this shit where saturated fat is bad for you. It's going to do all these terrible things. It just doesn't. It's just that truth does not hold up. But at the same time, we can also look at the vegan diet. And when I first went vegan, I felt fucking amazing too. I lost like 15, 20 pounds. I was slim. I was trim. I had endurance. I wasn't, but at the same time, let me say this, one problem with the vegan diet is sometimes, you tend to binge eat on sugar, right? The vegan diet throws out a lot of the soy, a lot of the sugar, a lot of the grains. Right? It just doesn't end. It just doesn't end. And you can't even turn to science anymore because who's paying for the science? It's all over the board. So what I'm calling for is us just to get this sorted out somehow, some way. So I'm going to stay on this like a freaking hawk. And if nothing else, I think I need to be the unbiased voice here in the health world that, look, I'll tell you that I feel good doing high fat, but I'll tell you I felt good doing low fat and high carbs. So I'm playing both sides of the coin here. Whatever is the best science and the best proof and the best observation, I'm going to tout that. But stop trying to mislead us, man. And stop clinging, I think more than anything, if you're a consumer, you are a consumer, stop clinging so hard to your ideology. This is the mistake I made for so long, because I promise you, you're going to find corruption on your side and you're going to find better answers on the other side, no matter what side you're on. So just do you. Be honest with your bio-individuality. Do what you feel is right, but be honest too if you have deficiencies, if you feel like you're not sleeping well, if you feel like you are more moody or you have brain fog or you're dealing with, diabetic reactions. Be honest with that, because it's the only way you're going to get to the bottom of of your own health, and don't rely on this crazy science that's so corrupted that at this point both sides are incredibly corrupted, that you can't even get an honest, clear answer. So that is my rant for today. I went a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I just feel so passionately about this. I'm just so angry, and at the same time a little heartbroken that, man, God damn it, I just want to punch these scientists. God, can we make that part of the summit? Whoever we find is lying more. Like, we can just line up every fat person in America, everybody who's dealing with, autoimmunity and who's diagnosed with some disease because they swore by some specific diet they heard by some published report somewhere, that they can just punch these scientists in the face, because fuck them, man. Fuck them. Fuck the FDA. Fuck the USDA and all these people who keep taking funding from these corrupt organizations. You're literally killing people. Ugh. God damn, it makes me so mad. But I'm going to end it there, you guys, before I throw my microphone across the room. Thank you all for listening. I would love to know what you guys think. Are you frustrated with the diets? Are you frustrated with the proselytizers of high fat, low carb, high fat, high carb, low fat, protein, whatever else is out there, saturated fat, cholesterol? Are you frustrated with this shit? Let me know. Send me a tweet at HolisticAhole. Go to my Facebook page, send me a message on Facebook, shoot me an email, holistic.a.hole@gmail.com, or just shoot me a little message on Instagram. I'm on all these things. I'm on all of it, baby. You can't get me out of your head. I'm here to stay. Why? Because nobody's paying me. So we got to do this until somebody pipes up and says we need the Holistic A-hole on our side, and then just starts paying me mad money, and I will be the first one to be corrupted. And tell you what, if I ruin your life, you have permission to punch me in the face. That's what I say. All right. Thanks for listening, you guys. Go on to iTunes, leave a 5-star review, and subscribe to the podcast, and catch you on the next one. Peace.